welcome to another episode of the Pursuing Greatness podcast, the place experts share their wisdom on living well by mastering health, wealth, relationships, and spirit. Before we get started, I want to let you know that the best way to support the show is just to subscribe, like, and share this episode with your friends and family. Also, if you'd like to learn more about how to master life, check out our website at pursuinggreatnesspodcast.com. With that said, I hope you enjoy the episode. We have a very special guest with us today, so grab your pen and paper and enjoy the journey. All right, we are live with another episode of the Pursuing Greatness podcast. Today we have with us Tyler Menezes. Sorry, Tyler, I think I just screwed up.
Menezes, it's okay.
Menezes. I thought I had that right going into this, and I totally botched it, but it's all right. Tyler's with us. He is the executive director at CodeBay, a nonprofit which provides opportunities for underserved students to explore a future in tech. He is a former programmer, and by the age of 20, he'd already published papers with Microsoft Research and raised nearly $1 million for a tech startup from leading investors before deciding to leave tech to work in education nonprofits. I am very excited to have Tyler here. Tyler, thank you for hopping on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We always start here at Pursuing Greatness with stories because we like to hear how people kind of got to where they are today. I've heard you had a great story. So why don't you take us back to the beginning before you knew how to program? Tell us how you got from where you were to where you are today.
Yeah, so for me, I think the story of how I got interested in programming actually started when I was a super miserable 10-year-old. And I think I may have actually been clinically depressed. My parents couldn't get me out of bed to go to school most days. I was living in Spokane, Washington, not even the city, like an hour outside of it. I was going to a school called East Farms Elementary, and I was like super miserable. I had no friends, no interests, no hobbies.
Small town.
Yeah, and I had been around computers for a while. My dad, worked in like networking, so it wasn't like completely out of the blue that I might be interested in programming. But I actually had zero interest for my entire childhood. Like I really was not interested in that. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so one day I was actually going to a library with my family, and I found this book that had a picture of a slot machine on the front. And I was 10, so I didn't actually really know what a slot machine was. But it looked really cool. And so I see this book that has this like really cool looking picture of something on it. And I'm like, wow, this is a book about how I can make something like this. Like it turned out to be a book about programming in Visual Basic. And, again, I'm a 10-year-old, so I don't know what a slot machine is. I don't know what Visual Basic is, but the idea of getting into programming, so that I could make something like that, it was a really exciting and cool, and like it completely opened my mind to this idea that like I have the power to do something. I'm not just this, this super miserable kid who has to sort of bear through this. So
it gave you kind of competence, a way forward into your future.
Yeah, I like agency, right? Like the ability to shape the world in some way. And so, I mean, sort of long story short on that is like I convinced my parents to check out the book. I don't think I could read the book that well for the age that I was at, but I sort of struggled through it. I got some help with my parents, neither of whom were particularly competent programmers either, by the way. But like we kind of struggled through it together, and that's what really kind of set me down this path. And so that really kind of revolutionized the life I was living. Like all of a sudden I had this thing I was interested in. Ended up moving to Seattle a little bit later and met a lot more people, I think, than I would have met going to East Farms Elementary that were interested in this. Sort of went through that whole thing. I think I took the sort of stereotypical like college dropout startup founder route of like, I did moderately okay in school, went to college, went to University of Washington for like a year and a half or 2 years.
That's my college right there.
Yep. And then, dropped out, went to start a tech startup, and we got accepted to a program called Y Combinator, which is sort of like one of the leading tech investment groups. It's kind of hard to describe them exactly, but they were the ones that sort of funded the initial Reddit, Dropbox, Airbnb, my YC batch, we had Coinbase and Instacart,
Wow.
Soylent randomly, the like meal replacement drink.
My friends love Soylent. I keep looking at it. I'm like, dude, come on. It's just liquid. You got to eat real food.
I mean, you should have seen it back at the time that I was going through YC. It was like, they would bring in these boxes just full of mysterious looking white powder.
You're like, no, that's not food.
Yeah, that's not getting through the TSA either. I think that was one of my concerns.
That's a good point.
But yeah, so I'd done this this tech startup, and I think that it really aligned with a lot of my interests in technology. I was getting to build the cool technology things. I was getting to do the entire, like everything you saw in the TV shows or movies or whatever, the entire Silicon Valley TV show. Like that, basically that, that wasn't out at the time. So like, it was sort of later that I realized how much of a parody of a life I'd been kind of living in Silicon Valley. But, everything that you see in the show was very much true. And it ended out that, after this 3-month Y Combinator program, we managed to raise about $1 million from some of the leading tech investors at the time. One of the biggest ones was a guy named Pejman Nozad, who was one of the first investors in Dropbox, notably passed on Facebook and some other ones too. So we'd raised a bunch of money for this tech startup. But I think for me, it just felt very meaningless. And it was kind of the same as when I was doing school or when I was doing... when I was working at companies as well. Like it was fun. I was doing work that I enjoyed, but it didn't really feel like it was making as much of a difference. And I think as much as everyone in Silicon Valley loves to talk about how they're changing the world, and making the world a better place, it's, a lot of time it is a buzzword. We were doing, at the end of it, we were basically focused on streaming video technology. And there are some cool things that you can do with that, but it's streaming video technology. And so I decided to leave that company, move back to Seattle, and join this sort of tech startup that I'd been a volunteer for like 4 or 5 years, doing tech education, and really try to take it from this weird part-time thing that was being run by some students, all of whom were at UW. So go Huskies. But, take it from this part-time thing being run by some UW students into, growing it into really a nationwide thing, because it seemed like it really had the promise to do the same thing for other students that I had, which is help them have that moment where they see that book with a picture of the slot machine and say, I can build that. That was really the focus of what we do. And so having the opportunity to bring that to other people just like really, really called to me enough that I was willing to, leave this job and, take a much less lucrative job in the, in the nonprofit industry and hopefully help bring this to other people. And so in the time since I joined, that was about 2013 that I joined that company. And, since then we've taken it to 55 cities around the world. About 55,000 students have gone to physical in-person events, like we're buying them pizza, like wow. It's not just some sort of online, like, oh, they finished a course or something like that. Now it is, obviously, I think with COVID-19, everything is, but, we've been able to bring a lot of joy and sort of transform the lives of a lot of students who are, college dropouts or like low-income students who don't have a computer at home, things like that, to people who are now in the tech industry. So, it's been a really cool job, but it's been a really cool journey, but, that's kind of where I'm at now.
Awesome. No, I love it. And I like how your path kind of started out from that one book, from that one moment, that the Visual Basic book that you found in the library out there in Spokane. Would you say it's fair to say, did your parents at all, did they like push you in the direction? Did they kind of notice that you had an inclination for programming, anything like that? And then they're like, hey, Tyler, keep, this is good. Keep going down this path. This is a good way to go.
I had actually, I think they had given up on me at that point. I know that my parents, again, like, I don't think that they were a stranger to technology. My dad sort of worked on networking, but he wasn't really a programmer. And he realized that computers were a cool thing and were probably becoming a bigger thing. And he tried to push me toward it, but I just was not interested until that moment. I think that's true of a lot of people, right? Like whenever your parents try to push you towards something, it's generally not the thing that you're interested in. At least that's what we see with a lot of our students too. It's that moment when you find something out for yourself, when you realize, wow, this is what I want to do. Like it's just hard to force that onto people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I've found that with myself and with many people who've come on the show. They've kind of had this moment where they found something that was kind of resonating in their own being, in their own self, and they had to follow that path. And generally, when it comes from the outside, it doesn't really work. If parents are telling you to do something, it doesn't resonate as well.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you kind of had that moment when you were younger in Spokane. You liked this coding thing, you were kind of following down that path, and then you had the moment again. Fast forward a little bit, after when you were in the Y Combinator, you guys had already raised that money, you were living your dream, the Silicon Valley dream, but something was missing. It sounds like you felt it to be a little bit meaningless. There wasn't the core essence of what it is that you were trying to achieve there. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think so. And again, it's cool to build technology that empowers enterprises to do enterprise things. And for some people, I think that is what they want. But for me, it just was never really something that connected with me as much as I kind of wanted it to. Right? I really wanted this to be the thing that I wanted to do. I enjoy the work of programming a lot more than I think running a nonprofit is kind of sending emails and talking on the phone all day. But yeah, I mean, it just doesn't, it just didn't feel meaningful in the same way.
So a lot of people, when they're kind of going down a path, I like that you went from a Microsoft job, essentially, a tech job, you're making a lot of money. I used to work at Microsoft. I've seen salaries. It's absurd.
Yeah.
And you went from that, you took the leap into nonprofit, which is a huge pay cut. I've heard so many people, when I was working in corporate, so many people were like, I don't like what I'm doing, but I'm just, I have the golden handcuffs on. I can't make the leap. Take us back to the moment when you were kind of, you realize this is not for me. This is not the path that I need to be on. I need to make a change. Was there any fear when it came to reducing your salary like that, or take us to the moment when you made the leap?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, I was sitting in our very nice like Soma office. I think we had like a view of like the AT&T park, or now it's Oracle Park or whatever, like the ballpark. It was like beautiful, like classic Silicon Valley office. And we were just kind of like talking about the future of where we wanted this to go. This company that we were building the streaming technology. And I think at some point we just sort of all realized that we were on a completely different page. And so the other two co-founders, Paul and Vu, and myself, like the other two of them were still pretty committed to trying to build this into something, but they just wanted to sort of see, what was going to be the most lucrative path that we could go down with the startup. And I was sitting there thinking like, I'm not really happy with any of this. I think that it doesn't really matter what path is going to be the most potentially viable monetarily or anything like that in the short term or the long term or whatever else. Like it feels like we could be doing something much cooler with our time now. And I think when it became obvious to me that they weren't on the same page, it was when I was like, oh wow, like not everyone feels this way. This is interesting. So I think within the course of, like a 2-hour conversation, we sort of just decided that, I'm going to leave. I'm going to move back to Seattle. I took kind of a week off, but it was pretty much immediate. Like, I took a week to just kind of hang out, like sort of ramp down whatever things I still had that were related to the company, transition that over. And then I packed everything up into my car and drove the 14 hours from San Francisco back to Seattle. I had some money saved up, but it was like we were working at a startup, so we were paying ourselves okay. We were paying ourselves, I think it was like 40 or 50K a year, so it was like not bad. San Francisco doesn't go as far, but
I was going to say San Francisco, that's like $15,000.
Yeah, yeah. So it was, it was like I had a tiny bit of money saved up, but it was definitely really, it was a pretty scary opportunity, and I think in my head, at the moment that I was leaving, I was like, oh, I'll probably get another tech job, hopefully something a little bit more interesting up in Seattle. But, I mean, the first place I went when I got back to Seattle was to the offices of this nonprofit that I'd been volunteering for on and off for like 3 or 4 years at that point. And I was like, hey, like, can I get a desk here for a while? Like, you got some empty space. Like, can I set up my computer here? And and they were like, yeah. And then the executive director at the time, Edward, who is, I'd been around since the very beginning, so I'd known him pretty well. He tried to convince me for like 3 or 4 months to join this nonprofit, and I was like, Edward, I don't know, but eventually sort of wore me down, and I took this job. And I mean, I think at the time that I started working here, we were paying ourselves minimum wage as if we were working 20 hours a week, which we were not.
Yeah.
So that was, I mean, that was like, it was a very scary sort of like, oh yeah, like we need to figure out how we're going to get sponsorships as soon as possible so that we can actually like do this as a thing, without like maxing out our credit cards or whatever else it is that people do in startups, because we're not, nonprofit is not lucrative enough that we're ever going to have the chance of paying that back if that happens.
Absolutely. I mean, that would have been, money is a source of many people's fears. And I can only imagine where you were, like, emotionally where you were at the time. You just left your job, you had a bunch of money, now you don't have any money, and you even have less money because you're paying yourself so little working at a nonprofit like that. But it's awesome that you made the leap. You left your job from San Francisco. You made that drive up to Seattle. I'm sure many thoughts were going through your head. That's a 16, 12-hour drive, whatever it is. And since then, it sounds like it's been going pretty well. You guys, 2013 is when you launched your business up here, Code Day. And now you guys are in 55 cities with 55,000 students, which is an awesome accomplishment. Where do you see it going into the future now that you've made the transition? You've already been here. You've been on this path since 2013, so 7 years. Did I do that math right? Yes, I did.
Yeah, it sounds about right. Yeah, and
it yourself going into the future.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like 7 years, but yeah. So I think that there's two things, right? Like in the short term, we want the opportunity to reach more students. I think that for for a lot of students, one, technology really provides this opportunity to be to have agency, right? To be able to affect the world. And the cost is not that great. I mean, we can give someone a $55 Chromebook and they can build a website that, thousands of people use. That's really cool if you're a low income, kid living in like Boca Raton, Florida, or something like that, where we've seen a lot of those sort of students. And then two, I mean, aside from the ability to do that on a personal level, I think there's a lot of people who don't have a voice in technology, and with how important technology is to the future. If you're, again, low income students, I think get left out a lot from these conversations. But if you go talk to some people who come from that background, they don't even have many apps that they're using, because most of the apps are built for people who have a lot more money than they do. What sort of things could we be building for them to completely shape the world? I have no idea. They do. So I think that we definitely want to continue to expand our work in bringing this opportunity to learn about technology, to find that passion, and to see how it can be creative to more people. But then separately from that, we also want to, potentially in 5 or 10 years or something like that, try the same model on things that aren't just technology. Because again, a lot of what we're focused on is just trying to help students find a passion, because when people find that passion, they are very driven. And I think that in a lot of ways, the way that schools are set up right now is, sort of designed to kind of beat that passion out of you. Not find anything that you're excited about, and then just go down a traditional, industrialized early 19th century career path, early 20th century career path. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunities for us to do things like this that are not just computer science as well. So we'll see, but that's a little bit further down the road.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I am a huge fan of what you guys are doing. So you got my support for sure. We are nearing the end of the episode. We've already blazed through our 20-minute allotment, so I have to push us into the quick question round.
Absolutely.
But thank you for sharing everything that you've shared so far. It's sounds like you have a great story, or I really enjoyed your story, and I'm sure everybody else listening and watching has as well. Which brings us to the quick question round. So this is going to be quick questions. You give quick answers. I'm actually going to start with a question that I generally don't answer or ask. So if you want to give a little bit longer of an answer, go ahead. And this one is about business, because you're talking that's what you're here to talk about. And a lot of people, you've already mentioned people who don't have as much money out there, who are looking for ways to kind of develop a skill that can bring them money. And tech is one of those skills. It's one of those skills that you can learn without having a huge upfront cost.
Yep.
So if you were to say go to an inner city kid, somebody who doesn't have any money, doesn't have huge options in the future, who needs to have some sort of income, and give them one piece of advice when it comes to the tech sector, how would you go about coaching that person to, I love that you say that you want to, push people into their passion. But when you don't have any money, it's really difficult to follow a passion. So if somebody were to not have money and using tech as a way to bring in income, how would you go about coaching them to do that?
Yeah, I think that there's 3 steps. One is you need to get a laptop somehow. That is actually easier now because of the pandemic. There's a lot more resources because everyone needs one for virtual schooling and things like that. So you need to have a laptop. That's the unfortunate reality of it. But luckily, the cost of that is relatively low if you're getting a used one. You need to have some idea of what you want to build. This is a personal belief of mine. I think that people learn better when they're working towards something. So doesn't necessarily matter what it is, but you have some idea of something that could conceivably make some amount of money, could be used by someone, doesn't matter exactly what, but something in your head that you want to build. And then the third step is to just start trying to make progress toward that. A lot of people focus on trying to take classes or like read books or take notes on things and stuff like that. That might work for some people, but I don't think it works for as many of us as we do. You just got to have an idea and just get started, try to make progress toward it, struggle, and eventually you get somewhere.
I like it. So start with a laptop, then come up with an idea, and then iterate until you find something that works.
And I think that's how many successful companies get started.
Yeah, absolutely true. All right, now we're going into the actual quick question round.
Sure.
Always starts with habits. Habits are the foundation of our life. So if you could point to one habit in your own life that you feel has contributed the most to your success today, what would that habit be?
Waking up early and taking the morning to read, study, understand what's going on in the world.
Early morning rising. I like that one. Next one, and this is about books. I'm a huge bookie. So if you could point to one or 2 books, actually, one for general wisdom and one for the topic that you're talking about. So business, coding, anything like that.
For business coding, probably Hackers and Painters by Paul Graham, founder of Y Combinator. He's got a lot of really great advice. General wisdom book, I don't know, no, I do. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yes.
Next question goes into quotes. I love quotes, so I like to ask people their favorite quote. A lot of guests will have difficulty coming up with the exact words. If you don't have the exact words, don't worry about it. Just give me the feeling behind that quote.
Another Paul Graham thing. Great guy. Startups rarely die mid keystroke, so keep typing.
I like it. I like the essence behind that quote is just don't give up. Just keep trying.
You don't lose until you give up.
Exactly. Next question is for your younger self. So if you could go back to the Tyler who was 10 years old, didn't have a lot of motivation, stuck in bed, go to him, look at him in the eyes, give him one piece of advice moving forward.
I think if I'm talking to my 10-year-old self, it'll get better. I think I'm talking to my 11-year-old self who's convinced I want to go into computer programming. The most impactful advice to me probably would have been, what are you going to do if you make $20 million? Because that was kind of what I was focused on for so long was making all the money that I never stopped to think, oh, what do I actually care about bringing into the world?
I love it. And the last question, or actually second last question, is about mentors. Who along your path has pushed you has shaped your path the most?
Oh, there's so many. I think that maybe, I I'm going to give this one to a guy named Kevin Wang, who's the founder of the TEALS program at Microsoft. And they also focus on tech education. And sort of we were both growing our programs at the same time, had a lot of really good discussions. And I think together we sort of struggled through to build something that for both of us has impacted a lot of people.
Love it. And last question is for the viewers listening and watching. You've given us a lot of advice, a lot of good wisdom. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you and get in contact with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
If you Google my name, you'll find my website. My email's on there. I have like a public link, even if you want to set up some time to talk or something. I'm generally pretty approachable for that. I think that so many people have made an impact on my life that have given me their time. I'm happy to do the same. So my website also is tyler.vc if you can't figure out how to spell my last name, which is pretty common. But yeah, my email's on there.
Perfect. And that's tyler.vc. I will put that in the show notes. So if you see the little more, the more button under the description, click that. It'll pop down the whole description. Tyler.vc will be there. Go ahead and click through and say hi to Tyler. Awesome. Tyler, well, again, thank you very much for hopping on the show. I had a blast talking to you. For everybody who is here with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason that we do this. So again, thank you for being here. I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic week and keep pursuing greatness. We'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for sticking with us on another episode of the Pursuing Greatness podcast. I hope you got a lot of value out of that guest. Again, the best way to support the show is just to subscribe, like, and share with your friends and family. Also, check out pursuinggreatnesspodcast.com if you want to get more information about what we do and what we offer. I hope you guys have a great day and keep living in integrity with yourselves. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode coming shortly.